planning. But that's not who I am, you know? So like, every day I've got 500 words to let my imagination run riot. And just telling the story sort of in the order that it comes out in.
I like that. I like that approach. I've been taught. I've just literally half an hour ago. I've just bought Save the Cat. Now I don't know whether you are a fan of it. I don't know whether you've read it. I don't know whether it's any good. But it just feels like the more I'm talking to people, they're all like, "Oh, you should read that. It's like a really good starting block."
I've not read it. I'm sure it's interesting. I'm sure it can only be useful to have read it. Like, everybody knows how to tell a story. We've been absorbing stories for since we were conscious. Like, we all know how to tell a story. You don't need to read a book to tell you how to tell a story.
Yeah.
And since I heard that, I was like, yeah, I agree with that. Saying that certain things need to happen on page 30 or page 60 isn't true. It might be helpful. If it helps you, then anything that helps you is good. But it at the same time, if it's not helping you, you don't want to like treat it as gospel, because there's no gospel when it comes to writing stories. I think this is already the biggest Zoom I've ever been on.
Is it actually?
Yeah. I've never had this many people staring at me.
How does it feel?
It feels kind of wonderful. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a big extrovert, so this is.
Welcome to another Q&A session with DJW. Today's guest is a very old friend of mine, very good friend of mine, Andy Berryman.
I'm suppose now a writer, director of films, which sounds incredibly glamorous, but I've made 2 funded short films, and I don't know how far do you want me to go back. So I mean, how I got into it. So as probably many of you did, I got into theatre and acting at school. And then when I was 16, I was part of a group of people who set up a theatre company, which was pretty much headed by a guy called Robert Icke, who some of you might be familiar with. Rob, he's kind of going to be the savior of British theatre, if theatre ever exists ever again, of course. Olivier award-winning director and hugely acclaimed person. What we did was pretty good. It was a pretty high standard, and sort of the bar was set really high for me really early on, which has had its downsides as well as its upsides, which we can talk a bit about if that's something you're interested in. But I'd really got the bug for film around about that time as well, and I decided, okay, I'm going to be a film director. I'm not going to do theatre. So I went to uni at York St John, and I dropped out after a year because there was about 4 hours of lectures a week, and then the rest of the time you sort of just left to your own devices, and I think you're just supposed to get drunk, and that didn't work. Dropped out, came home, set up another theatre company, did another couple of plays, very, very, very cheap, low budget stuff, filled some time, and then I was lucky enough to get into the Met Film School, which is based at Ealing Studios. And that was the polar opposite of university, because that was 10 o'clock till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday, in super intensive, super practical, surrounded by people who, had paid a lot of money to be there. And I was lucky enough that my parents, sort of remortgaged the house essentially to help me go there. So, I'm aware that I'm incredibly privileged in that sense. But yeah, and that was and that was good. And so I left film school like 2008. I hung around in London for a little bit. I worked at the National Theatre in the box office. And then I moved back and I did some work with Vivid, Dave Edwards, who some of you might be familiar with. I know, Dan, you've done a bit of work with Vivid in the past, directed a play for them. And it was, it was 7 years from leaving film school to me getting my first commission to make a film. So, there was a lot of just sort of fannying about in the meantime, but
I can't actually remember how we met. I can remember there was this one moment I'll never forget, but I can't remember whether this was the first time we met or not. But I was helping sweep the stage. I think we were at Ark in Stockton, and I was sweeping the stage, or I was painting the stage, and you were there, and we were chatting away. And I think I said something like, people don't fully get me. Like, people don't get me very much. Like, you either love me or you hate me. I'm like one of those types of people. And I remember you said something just dead flippant, or maybe you meant it, I don't know. And you were like, I like you, Danny. And I thought, I'm going to be his friend then.
When did you do Sexual Perversity in Chicago? Do you know what year you did that?
I'm thinking it's 2001. No.
Nah, don't be ridiculous. No, 2001. We were about 3.
No, hang on. 2001. No, not that.
It must have been 2009, 2008, 2009, mustn't it?
2000. I don't know, Andy. I told you I didn't know. That's why I'm asking you.
Okay, right.
I can't remember.
So I is this interesting for everybody else, or are we just having an argument about how we met? I was speaking to Dave. I was like, "Who's this Danny Williams character? Is he any good?" And he was like, "Yeah, he's good." I said, "Would he be in Government Inspector?" And he's like, "Probably not." And he was correct.
Yeah, I wasn't.
Because you weren't. But it must have been after that. Must have been around about April 2010. You would have just been hanging around, I think.
So, I think what I'm really interested in, and I hope I'm echoing what everybody else is here for, Andy, is, you make a living by doing corporate work. So you go out with either on your own or with a team of people, and you shoot little promo videos, little adverts, music videos, online content, whatever it may be, for companies that want to sell their product or that want to make a song and dance about what they've been doing or whatever. And that's all good. And that's all, that's how you live. That's how you pay your bills, like you said earlier.
I got a job at Tees Music Alliance, who run the Georgian Theatre, and I was doing social media stuff for them. And so I was meeting a lot of bands and wanted to make stuff and wanted to make music videos. So I bought a little camera and I just started making music videos with local bands. And then I would do little interviews with people who came to play at the Georgian, and I would make little promotional stuff for the Georgian, and that would be going out there. And then, someone from the council was looking for something, so Paul from the Georgian would recommend me, and then it just sort of started to very gradually over time. I was just learning as I was going and picking up bits of work, and it just kind of grows, and you grow your network, and you get your sort of, I'd say like a regular client base of about 4 or 5 different people or companies is probably enough to sustain one person. You can make a living from that. And I am much more of a artist in that I just sort of figure things out as I go along. And so far I've managed to get away with that.
And obviously, transitioning from the corporate promo side of stuff, you have filmed 2 incredible short films. What was the inspiration behind 6 2/3?
I wrote the first draft of 6 2/3 when I just finished film school, so 2008. The thing that prompted it was I went to school. I went to Ian Ramsey, if that means anything to any of you. And there was a kid in my tutor group, and he used to invite himself round my house, at least 2 or 3 times a week, to the point where after school I would have to hide from him so he couldn't kind of just follow me home and kind of just literally walk in the door behind me. it wasn't until I'd have been what 20, 21 when I left film school. So it wasn't until that point that it hit me. I was like, like I knew something of his home life, and it didn't hit me until then. It's like, maybe he just didn't want to go to his own home, and he saw me and my sort of lovely, safe, very privileged, very quite middle class kind of as somewhere safe to go. And I felt really quite moved and quite guilty, and there was quite a lot of kind of class guilt there in a way. I had this notion of someone coming from like a middle class person and a working class person, or someone from a sort of a slightly more deprived background. Just a tale of kindness between those two people, and the middle class person having some kind of awakening to what this person's life is really like, which feels a bit ham-fisted when I say it like that, but as you know, because you were involved in it, Danny, like it developed massively over the course of 7 years, and it was in and out of a drawer, and I was constantly falling in and out of love with it, and yeah.
And then, so, you've got your idea in front of you and you go, okay, how did you come to the point where you go, this is the script that I am going to put forward for funding? He's got an abundance of ideas that he says to me, I've got this idea, what do you think? And I'm like, it's amazing. You've got to pitch it. And then Andy's like, I know, but I've got another idea. So then a week later, there's another one. So how did you get to a point? Was it just a case of, do you know what, actually, I have to put something forward. It's just going to have to be this. Or did you actually go, no, this is the one I really want?
So Roxy McKenna, who is now a talent exec at Film Hub North, she worked for Northern Media for a long, long time. And do you remember when we actually bumbled into her office and kind of completely just blindsided her, and she was like, she just didn't know what to deal with, really. I think you'd set up the meeting and you were just always the most awesome, absolutely amazing, that just walking into a room and just talking about all these things you're going to do. And I just tagged along, and I think she just was didn't know what had hit her. But out of that, I said, I've written this script, and I sent it to her, and that would have been about 2010, maybe 2011. And then, I think it was maybe 5 years later, I just had a catch up with Roxy, because Northern Media were doing these little one-to-ones. And she said, what happened to that script that you sent me 5 years ago? And I was like, I don't know, just it's in a drawer somewhere. And she's like, it's a good script. You should dig it out, and I'll put you in touch with some producers to go for this thing called iShorts, which is what we were eventually funded through. And it was and I'd applied for iShorts the year before with a really arty, high concept horror film, and they weren't remotely interested in that, which I think is a big lesson in what they're looking for in terms of funding regional filmmakers. Is what does this have to do with who you are and where you're from? It's no coincidence that a 6 2/3 is the one that they picked up, because they're this has a really strong sense of place.
Yeah.
And it's from a part of the world which isn't often represented on screen and stuff. So in hindsight, it was a no-brainer. It made a lot more sense. I might be preempting you here, but the script that we submitted was 22 pages, and the script which we shot was 12 pages. So there was a big development process there as well. I think the best, the highest profile festival that it played was maybe Galway, which was really interesting because that was the first year they'd ever shown non-Irish short films.
All right.
It's quite a well-respected film festival, quite prestigious, and they did a Creative England showcase, and so Creative England put a load of their shorts forward, and they picked 5, and 6 2/3 was one of them, and that felt like the biggest achievement, I think, in a way, because it was that it stood out amongst films which had been made by much more developed filmmakers as well. So they put all their iShorts, which is the entry level films, and some of the alumni films, and some of the sort of more proof of concept films that they were spending a lot more money on forward. So it was nice that the story sort of shone through, and that got picked. Personally, like Norwich Film Festival and Plymouth, which I think is now called the Rebel Film Festival. They were both really small, young festivals, but they had a real buzz about them, and done by really passionate people, and just had like a really nice time, like floating about and mingling with them. And it got longlisted for a BIFA as well, which was a pretty cool thing. And I got an email from someone at Studio Canal, like asking to see the film, and I was like, shit, I've made it.
And so was it
Never heard from him again.
Yeah. Was it the Galway Film Fleet or whatever that made the film BAFTA qualifying?
No, there was a few festivals it played that made it BIFA. It was BAFTA qualifying as well, but we didn't get anywhere with BAFTA. But no, I think there was about 5 or 6 festivals which made it eligible. Yeah,
that's a massive achievement for your first, short film that's funded by the powers that, above the gatekeepers of the film industry. So
yeah.
And can you remember, I mean, this is totally off memory now, but how many festivals did it get into?
20, 22, something like that. It's easy to put a camera where you want it to be. It's a different thing to tell a human being to feel something, or and I think it shouldn't be about telling anybody to do anything, really. I think, so obviously a lot of you will know that Dan cast the 6 and 2 3s. I'm working with Shane on that, who was the younger kid. To me, Shane's probably the best actor I've ever worked with. Because I think we train ourselves to speak this kind of weird language. When you start to learn a little bit about acting or directing, and the way the two come together, we sort of we put ourselves in these perimeters, like, I can't give them a line reading, or I can't, I've got to give them an intention or an action word as opposed to describing the outcome. But I found with Shane, and I've got to give Dan a lot of credit, because Dan did a lot of work with Shane as well, getting him up to speed. But because Shane wasn't really an actor, I could have a much more honest conversations with him, and we just talked about, and I think because he was like discovering the processes of what he was doing as well, it was just a beautiful thing, and it helped as well that he was just so close to what the character was. And I think that's the best advice you'll always hear is just cast well, put the right people in the right roles and let them do their job, because acting is a job, and there's nothing I can say to an actor that's going to make them a better actor than they are. There's nothing I can say which is going to make them be a different person on that day. I think you've got to let go and trust and accept that it's never going to be exactly what you see in your head, and just be responsive to what that actor is giving to you. I think it really is about being very clever about casting, and then kind of giving them the role, giving them the responsibility, and giving them your trust, to let them do it. I mean, that's how I work, really. I just try and let people do it. And which is exactly what you said, isn't it? As an actor, you just want to do it. You don't want a 10-minute monologue from the director before every take or every scene, do you? You want to just get your hands dirty. And I think that's what, I think that is it, really. It is.
There are some directors that will do the very thing that Andy said you don't necessarily want, where they just give you too much information, or they tell you exactly how they want you to do something. And that's obviously one way, but personally, watching Andy work, it's much more organic and way more free flow. But that brings me on to a question, Andy. I'm not a director, but I do direct because I am running the school. So naturally you end up directing the actors in certain things. But so you write, direct your own short films at the moment. And you have a vision in your head because you've written it, you're about to direct it, so you sort of know aesthetically what you want it to look like. Then the actor delivers the line. So, okay, so Shane did a couple of things quite spontaneously, which you gave him the platform to play. And it was on the day, it was like, wow, that was total magic. You couldn't have written it better. No one could have told him to do it that way. It was just so organic. But if an actor is totally not getting it, you're like, oh my God, no, that is totally wrong. How do you approach that?
So when it's obviously not working.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? I mean, sometimes it doesn't work, you know, and sometimes you've got to walk away from something and feel like you didn't get it, and then it's a task for the edit to see, okay, how do I work around that? It depends on who you are, doesn't it? I think some people might keep forcing it and they might keep pushing someone in the direction. I think I'm just naturally a bit more, I put it in the hands of the gods a bit more. I think I'm just sort of, I feel like if it's not going to happen naturally,
Yeah.
I've never seen the benefit of forcing something. I'll try my best to creatively kind of find a way to make something interesting happen if it's just not happening. But, you know, I mean, there are times, you know, because you spend when you write a script like I do, I spend a lot of time, particularly on the rhythm of the dialogue. And if people are changing lines, which I'm fine with, you know, as long as it doesn't change the meaning or the intention or completely contradict what's going on in the scene, if it fits the rhythm of how that individual actor speaks more naturally, then that makes complete sense. You know, a lot of writing and directing is just letting go of the fact that it's not going to be what was in your head, you know, and sort of being mindful and responsive to what it is, what's actually happening in front of you. I wouldn't have made a good actor, you know. I just probably be a bit of a diva and a bit unprofessional, really. I think the actor's life, I'm not cut out for that. I'm not cut out for that level of wholesale rejection. There's plenty of rejection in what I do, but you know. Plus, I had loads of ideas. I just had all these ideas, you know, floating around in my head, constantly having ideas for stories, and I just felt more naturally pulled towards that side of things. But I mean, I'm really glad that I have had those experiences, and I know what it's like. Yeah, give me an appreciation for what it's like, and for how different actors can be and need different things. So super valuable. But I was never meant to be for me, I don't think. No.
Yeah, the only thing that we promote with DJW, and it's only because we've been told from casting directors, is just a lot of unsolicited emails. Are not healthy.
Yeah.
However, there is no harm, like Andy said, you know, in contacting somebody like via a social media platform to say, you know, I love your work. I know you must see thousands of actors. Here's my show reel. Or, you know, how can I get in the same room as you to show you my work? I think if you do it on a more public platform, they have the option to just scroll past it. When they get an email and it starts flooding up their inbox, and they've got, you know, it's that, and for example, if you were all putting DJW talent actor, then suddenly it's like it's coming from us. So that it's a very tricky one. But I think you were right, Andy, to say social media is probably the safest bet, because they're putting themselves out there socially, and that's the whole point. I think when it starts becoming unsolicited inbox emails, that's when it's not good.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say that networking and is a big part of this. But there's a lot of social climbing that goes on in this industry, and I think often we probably overlook the network that you already have, and the peers that you have, and the people you already know, and the people you're already working with. And, you know, just value that and be yourself, and don't feel like you need to walk into a room and be something or someone other than that. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, like what are we, you're all actors. What's the kind of primary objective of being an actor? I would say it's to be authentic. And as a director, I want to meet a real person. I don't want to meet someone who's trying to get somewhere or trying to be something. I want to see who you really are, and I think if you're a good person, then you will make a good impression without trying to make a good impression.
You are already part of a community of people, and I think it's really nice of you to say, Andy, that recognize that you're part of a good team, whether it be with DJW or extended people that don't attend DJW, and then obviously slowly we're all trying to chip away to be noticed by the gatekeepers of the industry. Like, I get it, but there's also no rush, and it's not a sprint. It's definitely a marathon, and I feel like we all should be trying to work together to create opportunities for one another. And yes, we're all acting, we're all actors, but I don't just want to act. I want to produce, and I just think we've got everything we need right here. And then once you've exhausted that, and you go, okay, I think I now need to, it's like when you plant a seed in a little plant pot and it grows, then you've got to buy a bigger pot. You've got to replant it because it outgrows its. And then it's we get someone like Andy come along, and he turns around and says, "Oh, Dan, I'm doing this shoot and I need somebody," and I go, "Well, here they are." And then so you get people dropping in from outside, which take you away from this, but then you've also got this to come back to. So I think that's quite a nice thing to focus on there. Do you get anxious or nervous when you're about to go into a new project? How do you cope with that? Because, as you know, all actors feel it. Is it the same with the director? Like you said, the director is in charge, or she's in charge of the show, But do you get anxiety and nerves, or are you quite confident, or like what's your sort of process with that? Your experience?
Definitely loads and loads and loads of anxiety. Loads of feeling like a complete fraud, complete imposter. Directing Mark and Molly, two beautiful actors. Mark Addy, has worked with, you're so excited to get an actor like that to work with you, but the minute you're in front of him, you're like, he's gonna realize I don't have a clue what I'm doing, and hugely intimidating. And also there is this, I think particularly if you are the director, but I think it applies to everyone, isn't it? You feel like you can't really be vulnerable. You feel like the worst thing you can do is sort of show the world that you are nervous, and that you in that moment maybe feel like you're not up to the task. And I've struggled with anxiety like all my life, and I still do. And it's only like the last couple of years I've really sort of dug deep and sort of had counselling and really tried to understand where it comes from and how I can sort of learn to manage it. And in my own experience, I just feel like the best cure for most anxiety is just honesty. And it's, first of all, it's just being honest with yourself, and then being honest with other people. And I feel like anxiety for me now, I've learned, one thing I have learned is I feel like it's there to tell me that I'm not being true to myself, or I'm not being honest with myself. I don't know. It's a tricky one, because on one hand, I want to say be brave enough to admit that you don't know, you don't have the answer, or that you feel nervous about this. The minute that's out in the open, I feel like that's quite freeing. Nobody should ever make you feel like lesser for being honest about that. I think that's really admirable. Most people don't do that. Most people don't admit that they're scared. Whereas I think it's incredibly brave to be scared and do it anyway. To feel like I don't feel like I can do this, but I'm gonna have a crack at it,
Yeah.
And also
no, go on.
Also for me as well, it's just I think it's wonderful to be a creative person, but I think we also neglect to realize that with that comes a lot of ego, and we all have egos, and we all have maybe slightly over time our egos become slightly overinflated and we put expectations on ourselves. We think that the world is expecting something of us, but I think just checking in with the reality, which is like nobody's really expecting that much of you. They're just expecting you to be a good person and be kind and work hard and just turn up with an honest intention to do the best you can. Maybe there isn't some magic formula that we deify like genius, and we put that on people. Those people are a genius. They have something special, but they're probably just figuring it out the way we all are. And when the weight of expectation rises up in you, just try and pop it and be humble and be like, maybe nobody's expecting me to be a genius. I just have to do my best. And it sounds really trite, but I think it's true.
Yeah, I think that's a really great thing to end on. Actually, is that we do put far too much pressure on ourselves to deliver. And I was talking to a writer yesterday who is doing all kinds of wonderful things with ITV, and she said to me, some days she wakes up and she just has not got it in her, and she's being paid an astronomical amount of money to be working on a fantastic project, and some days she has bad days too. And it just normalizes everybody. Nobody is greater or lower in that regard. Like, we all start from the same starting point. And when that firing pistol is sounded, some are quicker off the mark than others, but it's not about who finishes first. It's just about durability.
And I think it's that we kind of lose sight of the fact that there's a reason that we all went to our first acting class, or we all wanted to write our first script or something. It's because we're creative people, and we forget that creativity is human. It's an outlet, and it's something that is really important. If you're a creative person, you just need to be being creative, because that's sort of how you exist. And I think that we get it, we flip it, we feel like we work for our creativity. We pick a thing and we want to be really good at that thing, and we kind of put it on this pedestal and we're constantly chasing it, but we forgot that our creativity should work for us, because it's an outlet and it's a way of dealing with life, and the minute you start working for your creativity and not letting it work for you, it's a downward spiral, I think. And I really think it's good to just stay mindful of like, okay, how can I be creative today, even in the smallest way possible, for the good of my health, and not feel like it's something that I've got to attain or chase or something. It's
Brilliant. No, I totally agree. Well, Andy, always a pleasure, never a chore.
Likewise.
He's a friend, but I'm also a fan of his work, so I think you should join me and be a fan of his work too. Guys, thank you very much. Andy, thank you very much. And
thank you. It's lovely to see you all. Thanks for listening to me prattle on. Thank you.